I'm going to play this over and over and over again. This is body cam footage from a cop in the vicinity or city proper. I don't know much about Cincinnati, but either way, some kid got shot in the back of Cincinnati yesterday. And the story gets even better. I'm going to explain to you all how it gets better later. But this woke one of my Twitter followers up last night. And of course, being terminally online, Timmy, shout out to Timmy, went right ahead and posted it to the world because, I mean, that's how street journalism is. Like, you see something fucked up that happens, you're going to tell everybody about it. And who knows what can happen? That's how Ferguson popped off. That's how the George Floyd rebellion in Minneapolis popped off. That's how shit pops off. So, yeah, if you see something like this, talk about like how it impacted you. Like, this shit literally woke you up, man. Yes, it is another police brutality cam footage. So you see, hold on. So the cops are saying that this dude is running from behind this dumpster, aimed a gun at them. I don't see any gun. Of course, it's extremely grainy footage. But yeah, I don't see any gun. The dude is running away. And he's running, trying to get away from this active scene. And the police go right ahead and shoot him in the back. Why? Because American pigs are mad dogs, and that is exactly what they do. It's fucked out. Yeah. One more time. Okay, so they're all hovering around. They've gotten out their car. They're hovering around this dumpster here. Okay, dude is hiding back there. He breaks loose. He's running. And they basically air dude up. So, of course, Cincinnati is upset. This is Cincy's plug. Cincinnati, it's time to riot. It's written right, but we are not in London. It's time to riot. Cincinnati, it's time to riot. A Cincinnati police officer shot a boy in his back. He ran right past the officer. That was demonstrated in the body camera footage. He ran right past the officer and he shot him. Fuck. That it's time we stand together and take these motherfuckers down. Fuck Cincinnati Police Department. It's time for an officer not to make it home. Fuck his family. And what I know about Cincinnati, their energy matches St. Louis's quite a lot. So this was actually on East Price Hill. I don't know if it's a neighborhood. I don't know if it's a municipality. I actually don't know how Cincinnati is organized. I've never been out there. Maybe I should try to get out there. But either way, one thing about Cincinnati, this is true. They can riot. Basically, it's conflicting stories by the cops. I'm reading Timmy here. Yeah, he's a producer, and he's like, I like white people like this. I like white people whose ancestors came from moonshining in Appalachia and don't try to like be pretentious. Those are my favorite types of white people. Anyways, you saying that they said they pointed a gun, so was the supposed justification for them shooting. But as we saw in the body camera footage, there was I saw no gun. There was no gun pointed. He was actively running away and he got shot in the back. And of course, you have cop dick riders that always take the opportunity to defend the people who would also shoot their kids. So he says, as I understand it, rules of engagement don't apply to minorities, it seems. Indeed. As I understand it, deceased person stole car, then fled police while holding gun, blah, 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 blah. Timmy says that the car was stolen by 4 people. They all ran from the cops, and allegedly, someone in the car was armed. 1 was shot in the back, 2 arrested, 1 got away. It's all going to depend on a video of what actually happened. And for some reason, like, what is it with people in the United States saying that the police can shoot somebody for being armed? It's not against the law to be armed in the United States. And yeah, this kid was a teenager. So, yeah, fucked up shit. But welcome to America. But the plot thickens. I had a science teacher that always used to say that.
At these East Price Hill condos Thursday morning, Cincinnati officers tracked down a stolen vehicle.
As you know, we had a critical incident yesterday.
4 people get out and start running. In body cam footage released today, in just 6 seconds, police say 18-year-old Ryan Hinton aims his gun at officers.
He's got a gun!
Police shoot and kill him. Today on MLK Drive, a deputy is working traffic control for UC graduation when a driver crashes into him.
There is a connection between these two incidents.
It was his dad. His dad saw the body camera footage and allegedly crashed out. See, a lot of people on the internet do not know what a crash out is. This is a crash out. They murdered this man's kid for no reason. So he literally said, and again, this is all alleged, but allegedly he said, fuck it, took his car and mowed down this pig that was doing traffic control at a graduation. And you can look at the damage to that vehicle. That dude, whoever did that, that was intentional, and whoever was driving that car was pissed.
Crashes into him.
There is a connection between these two incidents. The driver of today's vehicle that struck a deputy has a family relationship with the 18-year-old that we shot yesterday.
Chief, is the person who hit the deputy the father of the person who was shot yesterday?
Yes.
Ryan Hinton's father, 38-year-old Rodney Hinton, is charged with aggravated murder in the deputy's death. He was taken to University Hospital in critical condition. Hours later, the Hamilton County Sheriff's deputy dies. The CPD homicide unit investigating both the...
Oh yeah, a valid crash out. It's a valid crash out. Jesus Christ, you have every fucking country in existence in your fucking, in your fucking handle.
death of the...
It tickles me when white people do that. Like, you're not from any of these countries, but you're going to put them all in your Twitter bio as if that changes anything.
Deputy killed...
I guess I have a Palestinian flag in my bio, so... No, the cops killed the father's son, Ryan Hinton. This vehicle was allegedly driven by his dad, who mowed down a Cincinnati traffic cop. And when you sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind. So the father may or may not die from injuries that were sustained in this accident.
Today, and the death of the 18-year-old shot by police.
I can assure you, as the chief of police for Cincinnati, I will ensure you transparency and a thorough and accurate investigation.
No, you won't. The dude was 38 years old. The dude's dad was 38. And he allegedly hit a Hamilton County Sheriff's deputy Friday afternoon at Martin Luther King Drive in Burnett Woods. That's a very auspicious place to get hit. You get run over on Martin Luther King Drive.
Barbara Morgan is still feeling stunned and defeated.
I don't give a shit about Barbara Morgan. Anyways, so, yeah, it's valid. When you sow the wind, you're going to reap the whirlwind. Leave people's kids alone. Quit killing people's kids. Yeah, if you quit killing people's kids, and you won't have these things happen to you. That's pretty simple. Justice is of our own making. If this dude's dad did it, that's the justice. Let's see what Screechy HE... Let's see what fucking AOC is up to. Screechy voiced AOC. I just cannot listen to her. I don't like her voice. I do not like her voice. It's just too fucking whiny. So she's being interrupted by this is what happened. This is what should happen every time her and Bernie speak. Like, don't allow them to get up and just run their mouths about oligarchy. No. Trust them on actual issues. Anybody can get up on a stage and say rich people bad. Anybody can get up on a stage and say oligarchy bad. Real fucking issues. Genocide in Gaza. So all these people are jumping up. I wonder how many DSA members were in the audience. All these people are jumping up trying to shout this person down. What about freedom of speech? Like during the Cultural Revolution in China, you were expected to face the masses. And no, they were not allowed to shout you down or anything like that. Well, you were not allowed to shout them down, or you were not allowed to plant people in the audience to shout them down. Like, why are these people so afraid of actually dealing with their people? Like, what is wrong with these people? You claim to be a public servant. You claim to give a shit about people's ordinary lives. Yet, every time the masses confront you, every time you talk about the masses, every time you talk to the masses, like, you act like you're afraid of them. When is she going to help us here in Puerto Rico? We are dying. That is true. I don't think AOC gives all that much of a fuck about her native land, to be honest. I don't think AOC gives all that much of a fuck about anything besides AOC and her own personal power and prestige. She looks so confused. So you've got all these rad libs and suck thems in the audience that are booing down this person's very valid question. Hello, Gonzo the Red. How long is it going to be before legitimate political violence takes place at one of these things? Like, we are creeping towards... Well, I guess we could already say that we're in our years of brass. And here's the thing, like, people always rush to call black radicals and black revolutionaries grifters and opportunists without evidence, yet they still stick up for people like AOC. Like, they still complain, they complain about us criticizing AOC, yet they demand that we donate and provide free labor to these shitty fucking liberals. Yes, it is racism. Of course it is. Everything is racist. I love how everybody just takes out their fucking phones and starts recording. We're so fucking cooked. We're so fucking cooked. She's saying that she is a nurse. And she's saying that she is a nurse and yelling shame on you. A woman speaks and men start to stand and surround her to silence her. Wow, how am I not surprised? This is why U.S. politicians never have to be accountable. The real question is, why did AOC lie about working on a ceasefire and more people didn't join the questioner but booed them, and the comments are filled with, where is this for Republicans? Look, we already know that Republicans are the fucking enemy. We know that Republicans are the enemy. What's the point of protesting Republicans? They already have shown us where they are. The reason why people are harder on the Democrats is because the Democrats actually continue to posture themselves as our friends. The Republicans do not posture themselves as friends of Palestine. The Republicans do not give a fuck about Palestine. That's why it's essential to hold those to account who claim that they're actually doing something about the issues that we care about. That's why we go after the Democrats. And yeah, at least she wasn't zip-tied like the other woman. I saw some reporter from MSNBC, of course, saying stupidness, asking, maybe she was lied to by the administration. It's like, okay, so here's the thing. If AOC is supposed to know political ball, if she's supposed to be a legitimate presidential contender for 2028, and she lets Joe fucking Biden and Kamala fucking Harris, of all people, manipulate her, then she's a fucking idiot and she should not be paying any attention to. Or, most likely, she's just willfully fucking vapid, shallow, and hollow, and all the DSA members and other people that continue to cape and work for her are also fucking idiots. Either way, nah. And yeah, black people are the canary in the coal mine. I said this yesterday. Dr. John, Tamanisha John, said that she had already dubbed AOC as a political careerist years ago. Like, we've been telling y'all about Bernie Sanders, we've been telling y'all about AOC, but white folks think they know every fucking thing. So honestly, I think we should just quit warning these people. Let these people make them live in the bed that they've made for themselves. Like, what do we keep trying to talk to these people for? They don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear what we've got to say, then suffer. It's really that simple. Each time she makes her way on our timeline, it's only gotten a lot worse. That's how it works. See, these are all of the DSA members and suck dems that back AOC. They don't want to hear about Palestine. No matter how many watermelons they wear, no matter how many keffiyehs they wear, they don't care. I laughed so hard at this last night that I choked on my apple turnover.
5 kleine Charlies hüpften auf dem Bett.
This is what, because PBS and other public broadcasters are being defunded by the fascist Trump administration, they're going to replace Elmo with shit like this now. NPR was also defunded.
Eins fiel runter und stieß sich am Brett. Mama rief den Doktor und der sagte nett: Jetzt ist Schluss mit Hüpfen auf dem Bett. 4 kleine Charlies hüpften auf dem Bett. Eins fiel runter und stieß sich am Brett. Mama rief den Doktor und der sagte nett: Jetzt ist Schluss mit Hüpfen auf dem Bett.
I don't even know why I'm watching this.
3 kleine Charlies hüpften auf dem Bett. Eins fiel runter und stieß sich am Brett. Mama rief den Doktor und der
It's your new public access broadcasting in the United States.
sagte nett: Jetzt ist Schluss mit Hüpfen auf dem Bett. 2 kleine Charlies hüpften auf dem Bett. Eins fiel runter und stieß sich am Brett. Mama rief den Doktor und der sagte:
Well, I guess it's better than 5 little Hitlers jumping on the bed. Gen Z Cocomelon. Next American generation is going to be watching Bob l'Éponge. I don't know what that means. It's SpongeBob? SpongeBob in French? I don't speak French. Well, I can understand some of it, but I really don't let people know that I can. They will think less of me. Why America's next war is heading to Mexico.
For years, the most violent armed conflict taking place in the Western Hemisphere has been raging like an inferno across Mexico.
Really? I wonder who plays a role in that. I wonder who armed all the cartels. I wonder who takes all the drugs that fuels this cartel violence.
Consisting of various different cartel factions all vying against one another for power, influence, and the control of lucrative narcotics trade routes and markets.
See, look at this map. So you've got, like, people forget that Mexico has like 6 or 7 whole ass armies. All of these cartels. Parlez-vous français, BLG? No comment. But like all of these, like you've got the Sinaloa cartel, you got the Jalisco New Generation cartel, you got the Gulf, you've got La Familia, you've got the Juarez cartel, La Linea, you got various local groups. All these people have guns. All these people have guns. So all these chuds that are talking about how easy it'll be to raffle stomp Mexico. No. You're going to be fucked. I also love how they left off the Zapatistas, but I don't think they're like, no. They're, I pronounce French perfectly. Parlez-vous français, BLG? Next, y'all going to start the rumor that I'm fucking, that I'm Haitian. Anyways, well, Haitians don't speak French. Well, some of them do. I think for a little bit when they were under the Duvaliers, I think French was taught in school or something like that. I don't know, but it was always the language of the elite. But the Haitian proletariat speaks Creole. Yes, they do have military grade weaponry. I wonder who supplied it. But especially Los Zetas, like they were formerly Haitian BRG wood track. But no, I am 100% pure Black American. Anyways, shit, what was I saying? Los Zetas, they were like literally Mexican special forces. Like a lot of these people were trained at the School of the Americas. So you literally have whole ass Yankee trained armies down here. But yeah, They just think that you'll just be able to just roll across the Rio Grande and subdue Mexico. Like, no. You're gonna be put in the back, bro. You're gonna be floating in the Gulf of California, or you're gonna be floating in the Gulf of Mexico. Either way, you're gonna be floating. You just ain't gonna run over these people.
In the United States. This war within Mexico between the cartels and against the Mexican government has claimed the lives of around 400,000 people through violent crime-related homicides and disappearances since it began in 2006. While the fentanyl and methamphetamine that they've been smuggling across the border have been ravaging America's streets and fueling the US opioid epidemic, where more than 250,000 other people have died from fentanyl overdoses alone just since 2018. The numbers of fentanyl overdose deaths in the US have been rising almost every single year since 2012, to the point where they were 27 times higher in 2022 than a decade previously in 2012. And despite the
I was in high school in 2011, 2010, and I don't know if y'all know this, but St. Louis had busing. So even though I grew up in North City, I was bused out to pretty rich white school district, and I remember when heroin first hit out there. Well, it's fentanyl now, but like you see, like 2000, 2002, 2004, 2006, like it started to tick upwards, and started to tick upwards around the time that I just got out of high school. 2014 was my freshman year of college, and it just took off. But yeah, it is definitely an epidemic, but you have to keep in mind that the United States government has no problem with using drugs and disease as forms of population control. So Trump doesn't give a shit about people in trailer parks, people in Appalachia, people in the ghetto dying of fentanyl. He considers these people surplus population. Like the Panthers literally had this analysis. This is also why a lot of black nationalists back in the day opposed birth control, because they saw it as trying to wipe us out. But Chetshwayo Tabor, a theoretician from the New York branch, if I recall correctly, of the Black Panther Party, wrote a very, very good piece called Capitalism Plus Dope Equals Genocide. I believe I've read it before. I'm going to read it again because it is a very, very good piece. Equals genocide. All right. So, yeah, Michael Chetshwayo Tabor. He was a member of the New York 21. So, the problem. Recently in the black colony of Harlem, a 12-year-old black boy was murdered by an overdose of heroin. Back then it was heroin. Now it is fentanyl. Less than 2 weeks later, a 15-year-old black girl met the same tragic fate. During the year 1969 in New York City alone, there were over 900 deaths resulting from drug addiction. Of those, 210 were youths ranging in age from 12 to 19. Of the over 900 dead, the overwhelming majority were black and Puerto Rican. It's estimated that there were at least 25,000 youths addicted to narcotics in New York City, and that is a conservative estimate. 225,000 people, I'm sorry. Drug addiction in the colonized ghettos of America has constituted a major problem for over 15 years. Its use is so widespread that it can, without fear of exaggeration, be termed a plague. It has reached epidemic proportions, and it is still growing. But it has only been within the last few years that the racist U.S. government has considered drug addiction a matter of grave concern. It is interesting to note that the growing concern on the part of the government is proportionate to the spread of the plague into the inner sanctums of the white, middle, and upper class communities. As long as the plague was confined to the ghetto, the government did not seem fit to deem it a problem. But as soon as college professors, demagogic politicians, money-crazed finance capitalists, and industrialists discovered that their own sons and daughters had fallen victim to the plague, a virtual state of national emergency was declared. This is significant, for it provides us with a clue to the understanding of the plague as it relates to black people. So basically, white folks don't give a shit about drugs as long as they're impacting black and Latino communities, but as soon as they start taking away their own kids, then it's national emergency time. That's the context in which Trump is supposedly declaring war on fentanyl.
vast majority of illicit fentanyl originating from labs outside of the country and entering the US by being smuggled by cartels across the border. And despite the fact that the Mexican government has already been officially at war with the cartels ever since 2006, the prospect of the US military stepping in and taking direct action against the cartels in Mexico themselves always seemed like a fringe idea or something out of a movie for years. But over the past few months, with Donald Trump back in office again, that once fringe idea of sending the US military off to its next war with the Mexican cartels across the border has been becoming increasingly more mainstream and plausible.
Any war with the cartels would be urban and rural guerrilla warfare. The US sucks at that type of thing. If the United States is stupid enough to go down to Mexico thinking that it's going to fight against the cartels, like, for one, Claudia Sheinbaum is not going to allow that. But if the United States is actually stupid enough to continue to press the issue and think that it's going to solve the drug problem that it created itself through military action, then it's in for a big fucking surprise. Like, this will be Vietnam in the desert.
According to a memoir that was written by Mark Esper, Trump's Secretary of Defense during his first term, Trump allegedly asked him privately in 2020 if it would have been possible for the US military to fire missiles at cartel-run drug labs in Mexico and then deny all US responsibility for the attacks afterwards. Trump himself has denied that this interaction ever took place at all, but the rhetoric from him and other Republicans—
if Trump says that something happened, it didn't happen. If Trump says that something didn't happen, it happened.
Since then, on going after the cartels and crushing their fentanyl operations has only grown in fervor. In March of 2023, a group of 4 American tourists who were mistaken for Haitian smugglers by Mexico's Gulf cartel in the border town of Matamoros were kidnapped and 2 of them were murdered. Even after the cartel apprehended the men who were allegedly responsible and turned them over to authorities and apologized profusely, the incident sparked an uproar in the United States, and led to Republican Senator Lindsey Graham saying that he would introduce legislation to lay the groundwork for the Biden administration to deploy U.S.
So if the United States government is acting like it's going to go to war on behalf of black people, it's not about to go to war on behalf of black people. It's about to use black people as— yeah, I remember that case. It was a shitty fucking— it was a mistake. It was a shitty fucking thing. But the United States government is not going to go to war on behalf of 2 black tourists. The United States government is going to go to war for the interests of rich white people, and they will definitely use the deaths of a couple of black people as a pretext, but they really don't give a shit about us.
Military force against the Mexican cartels, something that Mexico's then president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, better known by his initials as AMLO, rejected on the basis that it would have been a violation of Mexico's sovereignty. But since AMLO left office in Mexico in late 2024 and his political successor Claudia Sheinbaum assumed office, the US has been steadily moving the pieces into place to confront the cartels more directly anyway. Shortly after taking office in October of 2024, President Sheinbaum secretly began allowing the CIA for the first time to start running covert surveillance drone flights over Mexican airspace and territory. The extent of this secret CIA surveillance drone program over Mexico wasn't revealed for several more months until an article was released about the program by the New York Times in February of 2025. While not given any authorization to use lethal force, at least for now, the CIA drones have been busy hunting for cartel-run fentanyl labs across Mexican territory instead, whose intelligence is then passed on to Mexican authorities and likely kept by the US for potential future operations. Since returning back to office again, Trump has ordered an increase in the numbers of these CIA reconnaissance drone flights that are taking place over Mexico, while he's also ordered the US military to step up its own separate surveillance flights along the southern border and along Mexico's Pacific coast. Unlike the CIA, the US military does not yet have formal permission to utilize Mexican airspace.
And they're never gonna get it.
That hasn't stopped the Trump administration from using the military to acquire intelligence on the cartels anyway. Since Trump returned to office, the US military has conducted more than 24 known surveillance flights along the southern border, using a variety of spy planes and drones. Well, in early February, a US Air Force RC-135V rivet joint reconnaissance aircraft carefully threaded the needle of international waters and airspace to fly deep within the Gulf of California, directly by the Mexican state of Sinaloa, home to one of Mexico's largest and most influential cartels, the Sinaloa cartel. These increased surveillance flights under the Trump administration appear to be gathering intelligence and acquiring targets for potential future attacks, while the Trump administration has also been further laying groundwork for attacks in other ways as well. Trump's pick for the US ambassador to Mexico during this administration is a man named Ronald Johnson, a former Green Beret and a veteran CIA officer with more than 20 years.
Oh wow, he's there. He's certainly not getting up into any nefarious business down there. Anywhere you have the fucking Green Berets, you've got some fucked up shit going now.
A prior experience leading sensitive paramilitary operations. A pick that suggests,
What did I tell you?
the Trump administration's coming posture towards Mexico and the cartels. Between February and March of 2025, the Trump administration sent a detachment of the Green Berets to the Luis Carpizo Naval Facility in the Mexican state of Campeche to conduct joint training exercises with Mexico's elite naval Marine Corps. While on the 20th of February, the Trump administration took the unprecedented step of formally designating the 6 largest Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, or
I'll be back. I need to get my other fucking headphones.
FTOs.
And yes, they are just glorified thugs with special hats. You've said that basically sums up every reactionary military force in the world.
The Sinaloa Cartel, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, the Northeast Cartel, La Nueva Familia, the Gulf Cartel, and the United Cartels. Now, historically and practically speaking, the Mexican cartels were never designated by the US government as terrorist organizations in the past, because there's a pretty clear difference between cartels, who are basically businesses whose ultimate goal is making money, and groups like Al-Qaeda or ISIS, whose ultimate goals are political change and who are ideologically or religiously motivated instead. Nonetheless, the designation of the Mexican cartels as terrorist organizations by the Trump administration does not immediately open up the door to US air power raining down on them in Mexico. It actually offers up no additional military tools against them all on its own. What it does do, though, is it enables US financial authorities to go after the cartel's finances much more aggressively than they used to be able to do. All organizations designated as terrorist groups by the US government get all of their assets frozen that are under the control of American financial institutions, while their known members are banned from entering the country, and it immediately enables their deportation. However, the most significant thing that happens when a group is designated as an FTO is that it becomes illegal for US citizens and even others to knowingly provide what's called material support for the group. If there's a restaurant somewhere in Mexico that pays protection money to one of the cartels, for example, this would enable the restaurant to get targeted by financial freezes or seizures due to the financial transfers with the cartel. The designation can also come with great unintended financial and economic consequences as well, though. Because of how deeply embedded many of the cartels are within Mexican society, there are countless Mexican businesses that are connected to one in some way or another. For example, for years even before Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, American financial companies like PayPal simply refused to conduct any business in the West Bank at all, out of fear that since Hamas was a designated foreign
Hamas has never. Why do people keep thinking that Hamas has been in the West Bank?
terrorist organization, and since Hamas was so embedded in the West Bank that their services might have ended up getting used by someone linked to Hamas. And then they would get come after by US financial authorities. A similar dilemma could now arise in Mexico, with the 6 major cartels in the country now designated as foreign terrorist organizations, making US-based banks, payment processors, and other financial companies operating in Mexico potentially susceptible to federal prosecution. Formally designating the 6 cartels as terrorist organizations also lays the groundwork in America for justifying an intervention against the declared
No, we're not supposed to root for the cartels in this conflict.
terrorists later.
Like, these things are like the mob. Like, everybody knows that they exist. Everybody accepts them as a fact of life. But the cartels are literally connected to U.S. imperialism. They are the products of Yankee imperialism. Like, back in the day, the Americans would play one off the other and advise these people. And the cartels are also really anti-communist. So no, we are not obligated to back one to the other cartel in the event of shiesty shit going down in Mexico. Revolutionary defeatism still applies, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we should also be revolutionarily optimistic towards the cartels.
Very shortly after their designation was made, Elon Musk, one of Trump's top advisors, took to X and said that meant they're eligible for drone strikes. Back in November of 2020,
It's amazing to me, like how much, like this dude could basically quote tweet somebody and be like, and tank the entire global economy. That is too much power for one man to have.
Before, Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, said that the president was committed to calling the cartels terrorist organizations and using the full might of the U.S. Special Operations to take them out. While this new Trump administration Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth,
This guy is so, like, this guy looks like a caricature. Like, if you asked a Japanese anime artist to draw an American politician, they would draw Pete Hegseth. Like, this is, bro.
has also repeatedly refused to rule out the option of drone
Pete Hegmeth
strikes and other U.S. military actions against the Mexican cartels when pressed about it, even without the express consent of the Mexican government. During a visit to the southwestern border in February, Hegseth publicly refused to rule out
What's that he's drinking? Oh, sparkling water, San Pellegrino.
launching
I thought it was a Pink Claw.
cross-border raids into Mexico to pursue the cartels, and said that all options remained on the table.
Good luck, babe.
But there also appears to be some degree of division within Trump's inner circle on how aggressively to go after the cartels. Based on insider reports, one of the camps in the Trump administration is being led by Sebastian Gorka, Trump's appointed
Who keeps telling all these people that they can... First of all, what's wrong with his head? And then second of all, who keeps telling these people that it's okay to grow beards? Like, first it was Ted Cruz, then it was Mike Huckabee, now it's this guy.
Senior Director for Counterterrorism on the White House National Security Council. Gorka's camp is apparently pushing towards using the U.S. military to aggressively pursue the cartels within Mexico and to destroy their fentanyl operations as...
Do they realize that the cartels have people in the United States that can bump people off? Like, do they not realize that? Like, if you piss these people off, they will, like... Bruh. I'm gonna shut up. I don't want to be banned. But, you know what? Go ahead. You think Luigi was bad. Go ahead and, like, make the cartels come after you.
as quickly as possible, with or without the prior consent of the Mexican government. This camp argues that the urgency of the fentanyl crisis in America demands rapid and decisive...
Hey, what's wrong with goatees? You forget yourself.
...action against the cartels, while the other, more cautious camp is apparently being led by Trump's Homeland Security advisor, Stephen Miller, who is allegedly concerned that going too hard on the cartels without the Mexican government's approval could jeopardize the cooperation.
No, Pablo Escobar did not work with FARC. Pablo Escobar was an anti-communist.
Between the U.S. and Mexican governments on migration and border issues, which could greatly exacerbate the numbers of migrants who are reaching the U.S. border. Mexico's relatively new president herself, Claudia Sheinbaum, has repeatedly asserted that Mexico will never accept unilateral U.S. military actions or drone strikes on Mexican territory. She has insisted that any U.S. military actions taken on Mexican territory without her government's consent would be a gross violation of Mexico's sovereignty, and that Mexico seeks cooperation or coordination with the U.S., not invasion or subordination. She has allowed the CIA to begin conducting those reconnaissance flights over Mexican airspace. She has deployed 10,000 Mexican troops to the northern border to patrol for fentanyl smuggling. She has sent more soldiers and police into the Sinaloa state, where her government has reported nearly 900 arrests just since last.
So, the same people, Los Pepes, people persecuted by Pablo Escobar. The same people that came after Escobar, they were also anti-communists. So after they got finished with Escobar, they also, the paramilitaries, the Spicy Boys, they also started fucking with massacring FARC members.
It's October.
But to my knowledge, there's never been any, not that I'm like expert on cartels or anything besides watching Narcos over and over and over again, which definitely is not a thorough education. But, yeah, to my knowledge, there was never any direct coalition between FARC and the Medellin cartel.
And she's already begun extraditing more than 24 cartel operatives to the U.S. to stand trial. Nonetheless, in early April, NBC News reported that several unnamed high-level Trump administration officials were still considering launching drone strikes in Mexico against cartel targets soon, even without the Mexican government government's approval. And
You cannot, like, okay, so if you just start hitting Mexico with drones, do you actually think that the Mexicans are stupid? Like, do you actually think that the Mexicans are not going to know it was you?
to understand what's happening right now between the U.S. and Mexico and the
Who the fuck else is going to be like? Are they going to be like, maybe they're Canadian?
cartels, it helps to understand a bit of the context behind the drug war's history and how bad the problem has gotten over time. Drug traffickers and criminal groups in Mexico began growing more organized and advanced in the 1980s, after the
With the help of the U.S.
historical cocaine smuggling route from Colombia to Miami by sea grew more difficult to pull off, which led to the cocaine smuggling route shifting overland to the U.S. southern border through Mexico instead. Criminal drug cartels in Mexico began coalescing in regionally defined areas, and they began fighting against one another and the government for the control of these narcotics trade routes and markets in the U.S. Under President Felipe Calderon, the Mexican government officially declared war on the drug cartels in 2006 and engaged with the U.S. government on a joint campaign to decapitate cartels.
Remember me? Miss me yet? I'm a Democrat now, by the way.
Leadership, something that they called the Kingpin Strategy. For the next 6 years until 2012, American intelligence agencies passed on information about the cartels to the...
And, like, it is fucking crazy to me how Bush's legacy is basically being whitewashed. Like, I remember in like 03, 04, like Bush was literally being compared to Hitler. Now, like, you got Michelle Obama hugged up with him, which I think started it. But now you've got this guy being portrayed as an elder statesman. Like, I was a kid, but I remember this. I mean, you have people that are like, that were literally adult in 03, 04, 05 that marched against Bush, that are now trying to like back up and justify this shit.
The Mexican government.
No, he wasn't that bad.
U.S. law enforcement agents cooperated with Mexican law enforcement, and U.S. Special Forces trained up elite Mexican commandos to go after the cartels themselves. But this initial strategy had its shortcomings. Some of the Mexican special forces that were trained by the American Special Forces later defected and took their training and expertise with them to form
Los Zetas,
one of the most fearsome Mexican drug cartels, Los Zetas, which later became the Northeast Cartel, which is one of the cartels that is now designated as a foreign terrorist organization by the U.S. Targeting cartel leadership.
So you spend insane amounts of money training these people. Billions and billions and billions of dollars. You arm them with the latest, most high-tech weaponry. And within months, they turn on you and form their own cartel. Those Zetas, if I recall correctly, were known as that, were basically used as contract killers. They were also a cartel, but they were also like hitmen. Literally, waste American taxpayers' time and money.
Also often created power vacuums and triggered fierce succession crises and civil wars within the cartels, which exacerbated the levels of violence further. After Calderon's party was voted out of office in 2012, and Enrique Peña Nieto took over as Mexico's president next, he shifted the strategy away from using the Mexican military to confront the cartels back towards law enforcement agencies, and the joint military operations with the US against the cartels were ended. Nonetheless, despite a brief decrease in homicides in Mexico following President Nieto's reforms, corruption...
Mr. St. Louis. I should change my name from Black Red Guard to that.
And crime-related violence continue to be serious issues in the country. Near the end of his term in 2016, drug-related homicides in Mexico increased by a staggering 22%, with more than 20,000 people killed that year alone. In 2017, a mass grave that contained the remains of more than 250 victims of drug-related violence was discovered in the country's Veracruz state. And then the violence continued escalating to an all-time high peak of 33,341 reported homicides in 2018, which has remained fairly consistent at levels nearly that high every year since. The murder rate in Mexico continues to remain among the highest in the world.
Narcos covered this as well, but there's also a very, very alarming trend of femicide in Mexico. I think it started in Ciudad Juarez, but like people just murdering women for the hell of it. So yeah, everything traces back to the U.S. though,
and is more than 3 times as high as it is in the U.S. next door. While between 2017 and 2020.
You know, for a second, I thought you were talking about the cartoon cat and not the president.
One journalist was killed in Mexico roughly every week on average. Then, after AMLO assumed the Mexican presidency next in 2018, he began pursuing a radically different approach towards the cartels than any of his predecessors. He adopted a new policy that he called Hugs, Not Bullets, in which he sought to address the cartel violence problem by legalizing marijuana, implementing poverty alleviation programs, and rolling out new sentencing guidelines for convicted drug traffickers. He also created a new Mexican National Guard, a sort of hybrid civilian police and military force to fight against
Mexican Red Guard? Mexican Fed Guard?
the cartels on the ground. Overall, AMLO took a very hands-off approach towards the cartels in Mexico, which effectively enabled them to flourish like they had never before. AMLO claimed falsely on multiple occasions that no fentanyl was even produced in Mexico at all. AMLO formally withdrew Mexico from a security cooperation agreement with the US in 2021, while the numbers of disappeared people in Mexico skyrocketed under his lax administration. More people
Oh, this guy is totally not liberal.
disappeared in Mexico under AMLO's presidency than during both of his predecessors combined. During the final year of his administration in 2024, an average of 37 people in Mexico disappeared every single day, while more than 120,000 people in Mexico are now listed as officially missing. So while the official homicide rate declined slightly under AMLO's leadership, the disappearance rate also skyrocketed at the same time. And since missing people are not counted by the Mexican government statistics as homicides, the true homicide rate when counting the dramatic increases in missing people since 2018 is likely far higher than the official Mexican data suggests it is. And the problems of violence and smuggling both got much worse under AMLO's watch, while the cartels grew increasingly more powerful.
Yeah, these are not real drugs. Like, they've just got, let's just record stock footage of sneaky super drug trafficking lab. They're crushing up random fucking pills with mortars and pestles.
As it currently stands now in 2025, it's been estimated by the US military that the various competing cartels in Mexico now de facto control around 1/3 of the entire country's territory.
My God.
Putting the Mexican
Imagine if these were communists. That would be slowly inching towards a strategic stalemate.
Government on a level of de facto control within their country that's about on a par with a recognized failed state like the Syrian government. Between all of the cartels,
Why is the Syrian government a failed state? It couldn't have anything to do with the U.S. See, my problem with a lot of American commentators and people who make stuff like this that are Americans is that they fail to understand our role in all of this shit. Mexico is fucked up like this because of American meddling. Syria is a failed state because of our meddling.
cartels combined today are an estimated 160,000 to 100.
This is a fucking army. Like a whole ass army. All cartel armed members between 160,000, 185,000 people. And you really think that you're just going to get these people with drone strikes? You are in for a guerrilla war that will make Vietnam look like a tea party.
85,000 armed fighters and mercenaries, almost half the size of the standing Mexican armed forces themselves. Large swaths of the country in Mexico that are under cartel influence are more controlled by the cartels than.
I remember Valentina Gomez Noriega. We were at a protest at my alma mater, St. Louis University, last year, and she hopped up and stood next to me at the fucking clock tower. There was some weird ass dude next to her who kept shouting a weird Zionist shit. But yeah, very strange woman.
Than by the actual government, which is why the U.S. State Department.
But that's what she does. That's her grift. And she's too crazy even for a lot of the Trump people. Like, she literally just follows. Like, I think did she record herself, like, mock executing a person? Let me turn this crap off. Valentina Gomez. Why is it in all caps? Yeah, like she did a mock execution or something.
Islam is the religion of rape, incest, and pedophilia, where they bow down to a stupid rock and a false prophet. I will never. They show me a lot of
if you're too crazy for Texas, like, if you have people in Texas booing you saying this shit, of course, this is a Muslim rally, but if you have, like, if you're too crazy for cops in Texas, then there's something wrong with you. Banna Banana says that Ethan Klein is too afraid to debate me. Look, these aren't fucking debates. These are not debates. These are, like, why would you willfully expose yourself to this person? I would not expose myself to Ethan Klein for any amount of money. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. The fucking mock execution video. But yeah, she's nuts. She's never going to win anything. Or knowing how politics in the United States are, like, if you had told anybody 20 years ago that Donald Trump was going to end up being president,
right now,
they would have laughed at you.
Nuclear armed nations stand at the precipice of an all-out war. Following a shocking terror attack against Hindi tourists in the disputed region of Kashmir.
It wasn't a terror attack. Like, yeah, people died, but from my understanding, Kashmir is occupied by the Indian government illegally, and there was a big row, a big fight, because the CPI Marxist was like, "Oh yeah, this is very bad. This is terrorism." I'm like, the CPI Marxists are basically the Democrats of India. And I do not say that lightly, but they say the same shit. Like, they also condemned the October 7th attack. So did Prachanda, the supposed fierce Maoist out of Nepal, who is now a rightist and a revisionist and a full-out reactionary. But yeah, so oppressed people have the right to liberation. Do we have to agree with all of the means that they used? Absolutely not. But ultimately, we have to put the onus and responsibility for this violence on the colonizers.
The bitter South Asian rivals, India and Pakistan, have leapt at each other's throats, exchanging fire, cutting off a critical water supply, and moving military assets in a way that suggests large-scale violence may be imminent. India appears to be building a pretext to strike Pakistan directly. Pakistan is making clear that it will defend itself at any cost, and attempts by the entire rest of the world to bring a stop to the crisis have
Is this about, what is it with this Nigel Thornberry-ass accent?
failed.
Oh yes, smashing war between India and Pakistan is on the offering, I say. Oh yeah, hey, crikey, I hope we don't have a nuclear war. That would be very bad.
The fragile peace between India and Pakistan, it is crumbling as we speak. So here's what we all are going to need to know in advance.
You know, Winston Churchill literally said that he hoped that India and Pakistan went to war because a civil war will strengthen you. Yeah.
Of whatever comes next.
Free Kashmir, free Palestine, free Taliban, free everybody. Oh yes. Balkanized and Bantustan, the entire world. I listen to people I don't like all the time.
Now, before we begin, we've got to issue a key caveat here. Everything that we discuss in today's episode is up to date as of sunrise, Monday the 28th of April in New Delhi and Islamabad. Anything that's happened since that time will not be accounted for in this episode, and in this case, that is especially important to bear in mind. Judging by the pace of escalation on both, Pahalgam itself has been a safe, popular tourist destination in a place where fighting is typically kept.
Steve Irwin is Australian. He is not British. They are entirely different countries. Even though Australia is still under the auspices of His Majesty as a king, God save him, they are not a part of the British umbrella anymore. Even though if we were to be invaded, we would be highly upset. Oh, yeah.
Well away from tourist areas. But on April the 22nd, The tranquility of Pahalgam was shattered when 5 armed gunmen attacked a large group of tourists in
Everyone you've talked to from both countries has told me that the West is just fear-mongering everyone.
the nearby Barsaran Valley, wielding assault rifles and
Australia is just Atlantis, but they've camouflaged themselves as an island full of dangerous fucking animals and British rednecks to get people to leave them alone. It's very ingenious, really.
wearing military-style fatigues, the gunmen snuck through the sparse local security and began to interrogate the tourists they encountered. Muslims were separated out. First, if they could recite a verse of Islamic prayer, and then they asked the other men to show whether they were circumcised, a common practice in the Muslim world. Hindu men
they made them pull down their pants and show them their dicks. Sounds pretty gay, bro.
who did not pass the 2 tests were then executed at close range, while women and children present at the
I don't know. Why would you go to a fucking rave right next door to Gaza? People do stupid shit.
scene were spared. 26 people were executed in the attack, including 24 Hindus, a Christian, and a local Muslim man
Albanese, is that the Social Democrat?
who had tried to intervene. 20 others were wounded, and the insurgents escaped, at least for a while. Credit for the attack was claimed publicly by a group called the Resistance Front, or TRF, a recently established organization that first became active in 2019. They're an offshoot, a subsidiary by some accounts, and a splinter group by others, from a well-established Pakistan-based jihadist insurgent group called Lashkar.
It still kills me that there's a shitload of Italians and Greeks in Australia. Like, both Ben Empanada and Drew Pavlo are Greek. I'm like, why would you go there? Like, you've got far more civilized countries right next door to you. Why do you want to go to fucking Australia?
Taiba. This is an organization with a long history of attacks on India, including the days-long siege of the city of Mumbai in 2008, when over 160 people
I remember that. That was a fucking monstrous thing.
were killed and Westerners were hunted down. Like the Resistance Front, Lashkar-e-Taiba's primary objective is to break India's control over Kashmir, thus allowing it to be annexed by Pakistan. The Resistance Front is somewhat less overtly religious in its messaging and is prominent on social media for recruiting purposes, but in terms of its overall goals, it and Lashkar-e-Taiba are on fundamentally the same page. Now, critically, India accuses Pakistan of directly supporting the groups, fomenting attacks, granting them safe harbor, and benefiting from their violent work to advance Pakistan's long-held objectives. Now, from the moment that news of the Pahalgam massacre began to spread across the
What is my channel like? Basically, I watch a bunch of war shit and do horrible accents. Maybe play a video game every now and then.
globe, it was clear that the geopolitical implications could be major. As if to confirm those suspicions, India immediately accused Pakistan of being behind the attack, citing digital evidence and intelligence intercepts that implicated
Kashmir is fucking beautiful, though. I'm not gonna lie.
Pakistani operatives in a support
I got a fucking I think I've just got a mountain fetish.
supporting role. India is yet to produce conclusive evidence for the world to see, but that did not stop a first round of reprisal measures against Pakistan from coming within just a day's time. India announced 5 retaliatory steps in total, including the closure of the primary border crossing that links India and Pakistan, the expulsion of Pakistani diplomats, a travel ban on all Pakistani nationals to India, and an order for Pakistani visa holders to leave India immediately. India formally downgraded its ties with Pakistan and issued information on 3 suspects, 2 of whom it claims to be Pakistani. Now, the most important retaliatory measure, by far, was the suspension of a critical agreement called the Indus Waters Treaty, a compact first signed in 1960 to establish control and sharing arrangements over the waters of the Indus River and several other important rivers. Up until now, the treaty has never been suspended, despite multiple violent conflicts, and has been hailed as one of the most successful water-sharing arrangements worldwide.
Water-sharing arrangements. Why don't you like him? Yes, he's not a communist, but if you only listen to people who are communists, then you're going to have a very, very warped view of the world. Why is one of his pupils smaller than the other one?
Importantly, the water of the Indus River and other governed water sources flows from India in
especially with military/foreign conflict shit. Like, there's very, very few communist commentators on that.
into Pakistan, giving India practical leverage over the rivers if it ever chooses to take action. Pakistan has long regarded the potential suspension of the treaty as a major national security threat, both because India could withhold water from Pakistan and cause crippling droughts, and because it could release the water in massive floods traveling downstream. 80% of farms in Pakistan rely on waters governed by the treaty, and the nation has already suffered consecutive years of drought, meaning that a long-term cut-off of water could be crippling for Pakistan in the long term.
Does the webcam image in your monitor keep going on forever? No, I can still see a lot of the future through it, though.
So for India to suspend the treaty in the wake of the Pahalgam attack sent two very frightening signals all at once. First, indicated that India's assessment of the terror attack must have either showed conclusively that Pakistan was responsible, or to take a cynical view here, it had decided to use the attack as pretext for a major escalation. And second, given the magnitude of the threshold that India just crossed, India most likely wants to make it clear that it will not be backing down. Pakistan issued its own series of retaliations in short order, closing its airspace to Indian airlines and giving a sharp condemnation of India's decision to suspend the water treaty. The nation suspended a very special visa category granted to Indians, with the exception of Sikh pilgrims, and suspended all trade with India, including trade deals and goods exchanged through third nations.
Goods exchange. You know what? That dude is right. This guy's voice is fucking cringe and irritating. I can only listen to certain people for so long. And I will only subject you all to him for so long. Earlier this week, a commentator on the Emirati... Look, anytime something is going wrong in the Middle East or North Africa, chances are the Emiratis are behind it. His voice is not soothing. What the fuck do you mean a British dude's voice is soothing? So this guy, this commentator on Sky News Arabia, which is funded by Dubai, the UAE, claimed that Algeria's Berber, their proper name is Amazigh population, was a fiction created in a French Zionist conspiracy. Algerian state TV hit back with this.
على دولة الجزائر السيدة والكبيرة والشامخة بلا سبب
Mon président de second baguette is ici second hour.
وتقديم المزيد من الولاء لكيانات شبيهة في الاصطناع ولعق أحذية سادة يقض مضاجعهم ما كان عليه بلد 1,500,000 شهيد من عراقة وبطولة وما بلغ.
The only word I picked up there was shahid, which means martyrs.
من استقرار وأمن وتنمية وما تحمله شهادة ميلاده من تجذر وضرب في أعماق تاريخ البشرية. وبالرغم من حكمة الجزائر العريقة وتبصرها وتعقلها وهدوئها وسعة صدرها وحرصها على قداسة الملح كما يقول الجزائريون الشرفاء، وعلى الرغم من كل التنبيهات المباشرة والمبطنة التي كانت ترجو من المتآمرين.
Oh, for fuck's sake. There's no satisfying you motherfuckers, is there? Maybe you all should learn fucking Arabic. Ever thought that, you racist motherfuckers?
أن يتورعوا ومن فاقدي الشرف أن يسترجعوا بعض دم الوجه الضائع، غير أن دويلة الإمارات المصطنعة تصر على إدارة ظهرها لكل ما سبق من ملح ومودة ولكل ما سجل من مواقف داعمة وناصرة حين التأسيس قبل 5 عقود، فهي دويلة لا يتجاوز سنها عمر أبسط إنجاز حققته جزائر الاستقلال والسيادة. هذه الدويلة المصطنعة التي تحولت إلى مصنع لإنتاج الشر والفتنة عادت هذه المرة عبر إحدى قنواتها اللقيطة لتنفث شكلا جديدا من السموم والوساخة والعفن والوقاحة وسط الجزائريين. الفارق أن الدويلة المصطنعة تجاوزت هذه المرة كل الخطوط الحمراء وكل الحدود التي يمكن لجزائر العراقة والنبل والشموخ أن تغض الطرف أو أن تسكت. القباحة تجرأت اليوم على أعز ما يملكه الجزائريون وأغلى ما يميزهم، أعز من النفط وأغلى من الغاز، وحدتهم وثوابت دستورهم وأسس هويتهم وانتمائهم، مستغلة وكل مرة صاحب نفس مريضة وتاجر إيديولوجيات في سوق التاريخ.
This gives heavy North Korean vibes, although the North Koreans are more hammy.
فكانت الأسئلة مسمومة وجاءت الأجوبة وقحة خالية من أي سند علمي وبعيدة عن أي طرح موضوعي، وعاد بنا البرنامج الأرعن إلى أسطوانة مشروخة بالية حاولت وتحاول يائسة التشكيك في أصول الجزائريين وضرب التناغم بين مكونات هويتهم. نسي الأقزام القائمون
The dwarfs running the fabricated UAE
على دويلة الإمارات المصطنعة أو تناسوا، وهم الذين باعوا ما لا يملكون، العرض والحياء والشرف لأسيادهم السفاحين، قتلة العزل من الأطفال والنساء والمسنين. قلت نسوا أو تناسوا أن الجزائري الأبي حفيد ماسينيسا ويغرتا والكاهنة وعقبة بن نافع وطارق بن زياد وبربروس والأمير عبد القادر والشيخ أمود وابن بديس وبالوزداد وبن بولعيد وبن مهيد وكريم بالقاسم ورابح بطاط وبوضياف وديدوش مراد، أن هذا الجزائري الضاربة جذوره في أعماق الأرض والمرتفعة أنفته إلى عنان السماء يمكنه أن يتجاوز عن أي شيء وكل شيء صادر عن شقيق مزعوم ومتآمر منتحل لشخصية الأخ والصديق، غير أنه
never ever pick a fight with Algerians. This is basically what she's telling us.
بأي حال من الأحوال لا يمكن أن يغض الطرف عن الجرأة على وحدته والمساس بأسس هويته وثوابت دستوره، فاليد التي تمتد تقطع.
A hand that extends is cut. A foot that treads is severed. And a tongue that offends is ripped out.
والقدم التي تطأ تبتر، واللسان الذي يطلق يقلع. قد يصنف الأقزام القائمون على دويلة الإمارات المصطنعة ذلك في خانة الشوفينية والحماسة الزائدة، غير أن ردة فعل كهذه يراها أصحاب العرض والعرق الأصيل طبيعية وعادية، لأن الأمر يتعلق بأمة.
Arabic translated to English is always super extra. They can say, "How are you?" and it will translate as, "Great and noble warrior, king of kings, thou must know one's glorious emotional state." That is very true. Arabic is a very poetic and beautiful language.
لملايين من الشهداء على أسوار الدفاع عن الوحدة وعلى مذبح استرجاع السيادة على الثوابت والهوية والانتماء. الأقزام القائمون على دويلة الإمارات المصطنعة لا يمكنهم أن يدركوا هذه المعاني السامية.
The Chinese during World War II, they also called the Japanese dwarfs.
ولا أن يفقهوا هذه القيم الراقية، لأن فاقد الشيء لا يعطيه، والشرف تاج على رؤوس شرفاء لا يرى.
Honor is a crown seen only by the honorable, not by bastards.
اللقطاء. الجزائر لن تقف باكية على أطلال ما قدمته للدويلة المصطنعة من دعم ونصرة، ولن تضع يدها على خدها منشدة قول الشاعر: وظلم ذوي القربى أشد مضاضة، لكنها وكما يفعل الشامخون سترد الصاع صاعين.
This sounds like a fucking declaration of war.
He's called the
Who is Satan in Islam? White people. Everybody knows this.
The lurking whisperer, the accursed one, the father of bitterness.
The English.
In Islamic tradition, the devil is a bit different from how he's conceptualized in Christianity. He's not a fallen angel waging war on heaven, nor does he compete with God for dominion over humanity. Instead, he plays a more insidious role, tempting, deceiving, and challenging humanity from the shadows. Over the centuries, scholars, mystics, and theologians have wrestled with what he stands for and what lessons his story holds. One of the names of this figure is Ash-Shaitan, that is, the devil, the Satan. He's also known as Al-Adu, literally the adversary, which you may know is a translation of the Hebrew word Satan as well. But the Quran gives him a specific name, Iblis. So who is Iblis really? Where did he come from? And what exactly is his deal? Why is he so obsessed with leading people astray?
Because he's British. That's what he does.
Now, Islamic tradition is incredibly diverse. There are, after all, almost 2 billion Muslims today, but it's a fairly universal belief that Iblis is a corrupting force, seducing the sinful and luring them into Gehenna, or hell. He induces impious behavior in those
or England
he can deceive, particularly pride, envy, lust, gluttony, greed, and hatred. According to tradition, he can be invisible or take any human form, except for that of the Prophet Muhammad. He can manifest in dreams or enter people's bodies like a disease. He's also said to distract people during prayer, making them forget if they've already prayed or jumble their words so the prayer doesn't count. One of his signature moves is whispering sinful suggestions in the ears of anyone who'll listen. In fact, there's even an Arabic word for his whispers, waswasa, which even sounds like a whisper. One hadith attributed to the Prophet Muhammad illustrates the extremes to which Iblis will go to disrupt prayer. The story goes that a man was mentioned to the Prophet who had accidentally slept through the morning prayer. The Prophet said Satan urinated in his ears.
Ew.
In other words, missing prayer was not just seen as oversleeping, it was framed as the result of satanic interference. And just to be clear, most Muslims understand the Prophet was speaking metaphorically here. Iblis also commands lesser devils known as shayateen, but these devils are not the pop culture, red-skinned, horned creatures with pitchforks. In fact, the Quran is explicit that shayateen can be human or jinn, which are super...
Yeah, human, like French, German, British, Russian even. The nations of the shayateen, the nations of the jinn.
Natural beings that can be good or evil. So devils are not believed to be separate entities in the Islamic tradition. Rather, their opposition to Islam is what makes humans or jinn devilish. Openly condemning and rejecting Iblis is an important signifier of faith for many Muslims. One way they do that is through the ta'awudh, a short prayer said before reading the Quran or starting an important task. It goes, "I seek refuge in God from the accursed devil." Another example happens during the Hajj pilgrimage, which every Muslim is expected to do at least once in their life if they're able. One of the rituals conducted during this pilgrimage is the stoning of the devil, which involves literally throwing stones at a series of walls in the valley of Mina. This commemorates a story about the prophet Abraham. According to Islamic tradition, when Abraham was preparing his son Ishmael to be sacrificed, Iblis tried to talk him out of it, but Abraham resisted. Each time Iblis showed up, Abraham threw stones at him until he disappeared into the earth. As with Christian tradition, Iblis is identified as the one who tempted Adam and Eve out of paradise, though in Islamic tradition, he doesn't show up as a serpent. For example, check out this 14th century drawing of Adam and Eve in the garden, which depicts Iblis as an old man. That human-like depiction actually lines up with how many Muslims understand Iblis more broadly. Unlike in Christianity, where Satan is often described as a fallen angel, most Muslims today believe Iblis was never an angel at all. Instead, he's usually seen as one of the jinn, which, as I mentioned already, is a different being altogether. More on them in a bit. It's also important to note that Iblis is not seen as the ultimate source of evil in Islam. While he tries to trick mortals into committing evil acts, he's not their cause. In fact, the story of his fall from grace told in the Quran implies that he gets God's permission to tempt humanity. The story in the Quran goes like this. When God created Adam from clay and breathed life into him, he called together the angels
and this is inspiring me to reread the Quran.
And told them to bow to this new human. Iblis refused, and when God asked him why, he replied, since he's made of fire and Adam is made from clay, he is superior to Adam and will not bow. For that defiance, God expelled Iblis and placed a curse on him. But before he left, Iblis asked for a delay in his punishment. He wanted to be allowed to roam the earth until the day of resurrection, when all souls are judged and either sent to paradise or to hell. God agrees, and that's when Iblis declares his intention to deceive and corrupt mortals except for God's chosen servants. God allows the plan and tells Iblis that those who follow
BRG Islamic conversion arc. You know, I've seriously thought about it. I've thought about it, but I don't think I'm ready.
Follow him will.
Islam is about discipline, and if it's one thing that I believe that you should do everything you do well, and I don't want to make a shitty Muslim.
Join him in hell. There's a lot to unpack from the story. First, notice that his disobedience before God is not the sort of militarized rebellion that, say, John Milton describes in Paradise Lost, where Satan leads an armed insurrection against heaven. Instead, it's a simple refusal, a refusal to follow God's commandment to bow before Adam. You might be asking, why were the angels supposed to bow to Adam in the first place? Well, the Quran doesn't say outright, and Muslims have debated this for centuries. His defiance before God is not implied to reflect any attempt to compete with God. Instead, it seems to reflect his arrogance or stubbornness. Nor does Iblis hide his intentions to lead mortals astray. In fact, God specifically postpones his punishment so that he'll be able to do so. This is a vitally important idea often articulated in the Quran. Evil exists not because God can't stop it, but because he explicitly allows it. See, for example, Surah 6, verse 112, which reads, "And thus we have made for every prophet an enemy, devils from mankind and jinn, inspiring to one another."
Oh, not eating pork will be easy. But, like, I'm gay. Like, some of the brothers might have an issue with that. Like, there are queer Muslims, but yeah.
Another decorative.
That's probably the main, like, hang up with me in Islam.
Speech in delusion. But if your Lord had willed, they would not have done it. So Iblis is not conceptualized as God's arch enemy, nor does he have any pretensions about being equal to God. But despite these differences, the Islamic concept of Iblis is closely connected to the character of the Satan in the Hebrew Bible and Christianity's notion of the devil. In fact, many scholars believe that the name Iblis, which does not appear in any known source prior to the rise of Islam, may actually derive from the Greek word diabolos, which is the root of the English word devil and diabolical, and which itself is a direct translation of the Hebrew word Satan. Though it's unclear exactly how diabolos might have morphed into Iblis, the phonetic shift is unusual and still very much debated. Other theories link the name to Arabic roots meaning despair or confusion. Although the story of Satan refusing to bow down before Adam does not appear in most Christian sources, remarkably similar versions do show up in some pre-Islamic texts. One example is the Syriac Christian Book of the Cave of Treasures, which scholars date before the Quran. In that text, God presents Adam in a glorious manner to the angels, who are then commanded to bow themselves before him. And when the prince of the lower order of angels saw what great majesty had been bestowed upon Adam, he was jealous of him from that day on, and he did not wish to worship him. And he said to his hosts, "You shall not worship him, and you shall not praise him with the angels. It is
So Iblis is basically just a salty motherfucker. I get it.
more seemly that you should worship me, because I am fire and spirit, and not that I should worship a thing of dust." According to the text, for this offense, God expels him from heaven. A similar story appears in a 4th century Coptic text from Egypt. The Archbishop Timothy of Alexandria describes God placing a crown on Adam's head and a scepter in his hand, and then commanding the angels to worship him, but Satan refuses. Since he was a being of great pride, he drew himself up in a shameless manner, and said, "It is more seemly that this human should come and worship me, for I existed before he came into being." According to this version, God orders the other angels to strip Satan naked and torture him as humiliation for his pride before casting him out of heaven. So the Quranic account of Iblis's fall from grace is strikingly similar to several apocryphal Christian texts. These texts were circulating throughout the Near East in late antiquity, and they portray Satan as a being overcome with pride who refuses to bow to Adam, and as a result is punished by God. Their echoes in the Quranic story suggest a shared conceptual framework, and highlight how the Quran engages with, adapts, and reinterprets earlier Near Eastern traditions and situates them within its own theological framework. Now, as I mentioned earlier, most modern Muslims agree that Iblis was never an angel, but rather one of the jinn. Today, angels and jinn are understood as distinct supernatural beings. Angels are God's obedient servants, often described as lacking free will. Jinn, on the other hand, are unpredictable. They have free will and can be either good or evil. The Quran quotes a group of jinn saying, "Among us are Muslims," literally those who submit to God, "and among us are the unjust." So, like humans, jinn exist in both righteous and wicked forms. They live alongside humanity, but can remain invisible or take various shapes, including appearing as humans. However, while most modern Muslims accept that Iblis was a jinn, early Islamic thought was not so uniform. In fact, the idea that he was an angel had notable support in Islam's first several centuries. In the early 10th century, one of the most famous early Muslim theologians, Al-Tabari, not only affirmed that Iblis was an angel, but he also cited a number of traditions claiming that he was once a kind of angelic general.
If it's one thing that I do respect about Islam, it's that there is like a huge amount of debate. Like, compare Islam to Pentecostals. Like, there is no room for theological debate. There is no room for actual structured argument or line struggle, so to speak. Islam, on the other hand, like, that's their tradition, and I really like that. I really dig that. Some idiot the other day was saying that Islam is undialectical. I'm like, no. Like, these people literally, while your ancestors were painting themselves up with woad and eating each other and doing inquisitions and all types of other bullshit, the people in the Middle East, they were literally preserving knowledge from the Greeks and Romans, bathhouses, various scientific theories, stuff like that.
According to these reports, Iblis...
You wish the 9 divines were real. I wish Daedric princes were real. I would totally give myself to Mehrunes Dagon. No, I'm more of a nocturnal guy, actually. Every playthrough I play, I end up in the fucking Thieves Guild.
led heavenly armies against a group of jinn who had departed from paradise and made their home on earth, where they were spreading corruption. After defeating them, Iblis grew proud of his own power, and this arrogance ultimately led to his defiance of God.
Jinn are white people.
And refusal to bow before Adam. What's really interesting...
That's what I'm going to start calling y'all. I'm going to start calling y'all Jinn.
Though, is some of these traditions that Al-Tabari cites give the name of Iblis before his fall. He was once called Azazel. This sounds a lot like Azazel, which is the name of a fallen angel linked with a group of angels called the Watchers in the first book of Enoch. The Watchers teach mankind the art of warfare and sorcery, among other things. So it seems that by the early 10th century, traditions echoing the book of Enoch had entered elite Muslim discourse, shaping interpretations of Iblis's backstory. These parallels suggest a broader cross-pollination between Jewish, Christian, and early Islamic thought. Now, you might be asking, how is it possible?
Yeah, they're all Abrahamic religions. That's why it's hilarious how people portray these three religions as inherently enemy and opposed. Like, no, like y'all basically for hundreds of years borrowed shit from each other, learned from each other. Hell, even the names of your demons and angels are borrowed and learned from each other.
Possible that Muslims could disagree about whether Iblis was an angel or a jinn. Didn't I just say that his fall from grace is told multiple times in the Quran? Well, yes, it is, but what...
I like how the jinn is now teaching us about Islam.
What the Quran has to say about his origins is complicated. Sometimes it seems to endorse the idea that he's an angel. Surah 15 verse 31. So the angels prostrated, all of them entirely except Iblis. At other points it implies that he's a jinn. Surah 7 verse 12 says, "You created me from fire," while Surah 15:27 says the jinn were created from scorching fire. And then there's one verse that seems...
That's very true, James. See what I did there? True, James? Yes. So how does it feel being the chief jinn of the Ozarks?
...to support both sides at the same time. Surah 18 verse 50. We said...
And quit whispering your fucking wash-washa in my ear. I don't want to hear that shit. I have enough evil notions. I don't need any more.
To the angels, prostrate to Adam, and they prostrated, except for Iblis. He was of the jinn, and departed from the...
Like, you come to me every night and whisper, take over DSA, take over DSA, take over DSA. Stop putting evil notions in my head. I have enough.
...command of his Lord. So what's going on here? The first half of the verse seems to include him as part of the angels, the second seems to state clearly that he's one of the jinn. And proponents of Iblis being a jinn will point to that phrase, he was of the jinn. Matter settled, right?
You are also of the jinn. Religion for breakfast.
They'll correctly observe that the prior phrase doesn't clearly state that he was...
How the fuck do all these white Zoomers know about Nation of Islam shit? Y'all know about Yaqub. Y'all know about tricknology. You all know about the mother wheel. Who taught y'all all this shit?
One of the angels. Like, consider this phrase. The headmaster told the students to raise their hand.
Like, bro, I grew up with Farrakhan. I grew up with the Final Call. That's how I know all this shit. Who the fuck taught y'all this stuff?
Everyone did.
The internet? Like, y'all just sitting up Googling Louis Farrakhan? Y'all is a masochistic motherfuckers, you know that?
Except the teacher. Clearly the teacher here is not considered one of the students, just as Iblis may not be one of the angels. According to this interpretation, he's understood to be one of the pious jinn, who once held a seat on the heavenly council without himself being angelic. According to one version of this, Iblis was captured by the angels during an earlier heavenly war, and while he was still young, was raised among the angels. But although he was grouped with the angels and shared their company, he remained fundamentally different. A jinn, not an angel. But proponents of...
Malcolm actually talks very little about Nation of Islam esoterica in his autobiography.
Iblis being an angel will suggest a different reading of the phrase, he was of the jinn. See, the Arabic word for paradise is Jannah. And some of the most famous early Muslim theologians, including the 10th century jurist Al-Ashari, plausibly argued that the passage didn't mean that Iblis was one of the jinn, but that he was of Jannah, of heavenly origin, as opposed to Adam, who was constructed of earthly clay. So who's right? Well, if we're going with modern consensus, then Iblis is one of the jinn, not an angel. But what if both sides were right? Some early Islamic sources suggest that
Ashkenazi Jewish people, to my knowledge, are descended from Jewish migrants who migrated into Ashkenaz or Germany and Poland. So their ancestors are from the Middle East.
Angels and jinn were not always seen as
I'm pretty sure that's backed up with genetic evidence.
separate beings. In fact, some traditions cited by Al-Tabari in the 9th century describe the
So yes, Ashkenazi Jewish people are descended from Semitic people.
jinn as a type of angel, writing Iblis belonged to a tribal group of angels called jinn. Among the angels, it was they who were created from fire. Another says the angels who were the gatekeepers of paradise were called jinn. Conversely, the 9th century scholar Al-Jah believes his story. For example, the early Sufi mystic Mansur al-Hallaj saw
This guy is fucking boring me. It's very, very educational, but he's also boring the shit out of me. So some people are thinking that, well, some people that, I don't know if this is one of those NAFO weirdos, but look, don't attack the Victory Day Parade. You're going to bring the whole world down on you. Like these people keep talking about doing terrorist attacks inside Russia. That's not, no. Like, y'all are already getting your asses kicked. Why would you bring even more suffering down upon yourselves? If you were smart, you'd play off of the divisions within your enemy's country, not galvanize them and unite them. Quit being dumb, Zelensky. I know you're mad that the U.S. government is cutting off your sugar, but damn, bro. Don't do stupid stuff like this. It's not going to work. Spirits were high on the picket line in Denver, Colorado, as members of the UAW Local 766, it should be Local 666, Lockheed Martin. So you've got these fucking imperialist parasites who think that, okay, so rewind back to last year when Palestinian solidarity activists were trying to get these workers to come out on strike, trying to organize an anti-imperialist movement among these workers. You know what these people were trying to do? They were trying to run them over. Note also that there's not a single black or Hispanic person among them. These are labor aristocrats. And what's the gasoline for? Oh, that must be, they always have fire barrels. Anyways, they were trying to run over these activists. They're trying to fight people. Like, months, years of seeing little kids' bodies getting plastered up on the wall. Y'all did not walk out on strike. Palestinian trade unions literally called y'all out on strike. They said, hey, have a general strike in solidarity with us. We need help. We need unity among the international proletariat. Y'all did not march. Y'all did not walk out on strike. But now, because the free shit for Whitey train is dwindling to nothing, now y'all want to go out on strike. Fuck y'all. Hope y'all fucking starve. United Airstrike Workers.
Do not.
And this is also really cool. After seeing, like, a lot of people, after seeing Sinners, they get really, really interested in hoodoo and stuff like that. And I'm here for it. Like, that's literally my grandma's tradition. Like, my grandma literally put her boss in the freezer back in the day, and I found it. And I was like, oh, what the fuck is this? I'm like, my grandma's like, mind your own fucking business. So I was like, okay. But yeah, I learned a lot.
My story on why I do
And no, I do not put spells on people.
not play with witchcraft. So when I was about 22, 23 years old, my then best friend at the time, grandmother, used to do work. She wasn't your average grandma, you know, with the moo-moo. No, she was turned. She smoked weed. She drank. She hung out. She could dress. She was that type of grandma. But she did work. She would do things like she would put your name in the freezer when she wanted you to stop doing something. She didn't put it in a bag of water like I be hearing other people say. No, she put your name straight in the freezer, and whatever she focused on that she wanted you to stop doing, you would stop doing. She would also do things like the jar, but she didn't do like honey jars. She would do a simple jar, and she would have you write their name.
Thank you, Just True James. Similar to cops, the types of folks who may take the job at Lockheed Martin may not be rich, but they're not working class. Yeah, like what type of person with the conscience would take a job making drones and missiles and cluster bombs and jets and all types of other horrible shit? Like, who does that?
Down and
If these people had any conscience, they would have long resigned.
put their name in a jar of water and hide it in the house, and the person would not go nowhere. She did stuff like that. And the crazy thing about it, we saw it work. Me and her granddaughter, my best friend at the time, we saw it work. Whatever she said, it worked. So around that time, you know, we young, we had little boyfriends that was cutting up or whatever. So we call ourselves wanting to get our boyfriends in line.
I love this creepy 90s horror movie soundtrack. The woo, woo. Yeah, I'm on Twitch. I'm everywhere.
So she told us this simple one.
Well, I'm everywhere except for Kick, because Kick is for fascists.
To write their name down. If we don't hear from them and we want to hear from them, write their name down, put it under the pillow, and sleep on it. And you would hear from them. And I promise you, I used to do it. And at the time, I wouldn't hear from my baby daddy for weeks. I would put his name, write his whole name down, sleep on it. The next morning before 9 a.m., he would call me. So all her stuff worked. But this is where it went wrong. It was this one spell that...
Thank you, Luke.
She had me do because at the time, my twin's father was cutting up real bad. I was in love with him, and I wanted him to stay home and stop cheating on me. She told me to write his name down and put it in a jar and put it in some water and hide it in the house, and he wouldn't go nowhere. I'm like, how this gonna work? Because not only was my baby daddy unfaithful, just wilding, he young, we didn't even live together. But I was in love, and my baby daddy was cheating, and I wanted him to be with me. So I did what she told me to do. I wrote his name down, his whole name, put it in a jar of water, hid it in the house. Y'all, like a month and a half later, guess what happened? He gets arrested. They lock him up. He don't get no bond. It's a serious charge. And when they finally give him a bond, they let him go under the conditions of him being on house arrest. Y'all, the spell said he would never leave the house. The man was on house arrest, and he got released to my house, my address. So y'all, once he gets released to my address, we have the best relationship ever. We getting along, we in love. He's never been this nice to me. I'm so freaking happy. Till one day, y'all, I'm out shopping with my sister, and he at the house. Remember, he on house arrest. I get back from shopping with my sister, y'all, why the jar sitting on my coffee table, and he just sitting there. Y'all, he found the jar. He said real calm, yo, what my name doing in that jar? I was like, I ain't know what to say. I was like, I don't know. He was like, hey, yo, get my name out that jar. I was like, throw it away. He said, I'm not touching that jar. Get my name out that jar. Instantly, the spell broke. Instantly. My world got turned upside down. Do y'all hear me? As soon as the spell broke, somehow the conditions of his bond got to the point where he could leave and go certain places, and then he eventually got off house arrest. He left my house. He started back cheating double time to the part where he just moved and just wasn't, like, it was almost like he hated me. Y'all, that spell backfired.
Yeah, he hated you. You put his name in a fucking jar and turned him into a prisoner. Of course he hated you.
So bad. I remember one night I went...
You literally said, don't play with someone's free will.
Looking for him. And I hate to admit this, but I went looking for this man. And I remember I didn't have on no shoes, and it was in the middle of November. I went looking for him with no shoes on in the middle of November. I don't even know why I didn't have on no shoes. Y'all better stop playing with people's free will. To this day, me and that man don't get along. Like, it's a whole bunch of stuff that happened after that. I could talk for hours. But to this day, me and that man do not get along. Stop playing with people's free will. If they want to be with you, they're going to be with you. Because when it comes back times 3. When I tell y'all I lost everything, I lost financially, I lost mentally. I started smoking weed around that time. I wasn't even a weed smoker. I lost. And I'm still not with a nigga. Stop playing around with that stuff. You cannot force nobody to be with you.
Learn from that. I don't know what the lesson for communists is, because most communists don't do hoodoo and witchcraft, but yeah, learn from that. I've got to get ready for a meeting. Peace.